Okay, remember when you identify the terms, terms are separated by plus and minus signs. So to identify the terms, all you got to do on the test is just underline each term. So you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 terms there. Over here, when you identify them, there's a term, there's a minus, so that's a term, there, 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 and there. Now, there's also, you got to identify the like terms too. So there's two things you got to do here. So here we identified all the terms. You could either list all the like terms, like 9y and -3y, 8 and 2, or easier, you could just connect them like we did before. We just drew a line connecting those two, and you could either put it on top or on bottom, those two like that. So that's identifying the like terms also. So the same thing here, you could either list them, 3n squared and 8n squared are like terms, because remember they gotta not only have the same letter but the same exponent. Then -5n and an n. So you got to remember to keep that. Since there's a minus in front, that means it's negative. Same thing back here. Since there's a minus in front, that means it's a negative term. And then we have a 7 and a -3. Again, another negative. Or you can do like we did. You could just connect them like that. Those two are like terms. These two are like terms. And those two are like terms. Probably the easiest way to do it that way. Okay, the sum or difference. Sum means to add, like this one. Difference means to subtract, like this one. Now, the add ones are the easy ones. The parentheses are just there to keep these two separate, just to separate the signs, basically. If it's adding two of these, there's nothing in front of the parenthesis here or here, so you don't have to multiply through like this one. So all you got to do is just combine the like terms. You could rewrite it without the parentheses because they're no longer needed. Then you just combine the like terms. There's a 4y plus a 6y makes 10y's. And then when you do these two, this is a -10 and a -3 makes -13. So you just put -13. Now when you do this on a calculator, it'd be -10 minus 3. So remember, if you don't use a calculator, if you use the subtract rules, you change the sign, change the sign. The signs are the same, so you add them up, 13, and keep the sign. That's why we put a negative in front. Negative and the minus mean the same thing. But if you're doing it on a calculator, you just put in the 10, make it negative by hitting that plus minus sign, and then you subtract 3, and you get -13. Now, the subtract ones, if you remember, anytime there's a negative in front of the parenthesis, that means change the sign of everything inside. So since there's no sign in front of x, that means it's positive, so you subtract x. And then there's a minus, so that changes to plus. Then you're done with that. Now we do exactly like we did over here. You just combine the like terms. We have 2x's here and a -x. 2 minus 1, because remember if there's nothing in front it means it's a 1, is 1x. But don't write it as 1x, just put x, because 1x is just an x. So that takes care of those. Then you do the 7 and the 3. They're both positive, which makes +10. And you're done. Remember, you can't combine these because this doesn't have an x. You can't combine this. Don't go 10 minus 3 and put -13y. It's not -13y because there's no y's there. You can't combine them. They're not like terms. Then on this one, it's an add, but there's a number in front of the parenthesis, which means you have to multiply it through. So 3 times 2m makes 6m. 3 times -4 is -12. So there we distributed that through. Now we do just like we did up here. Combine the like terms. There's negative 3 and positive 6 makes positive 3 m's. And then a 2 take away 12 is negative 10. So we put minus 10. Okay, write an expression in simplest form. So like this is an expression right here, and here we simplified it. This was an expression with simplified. Simplified just means combine all the like terms. That represents the perimeter. Remember, perimeter is distance around, which means you add all the sides. So we got to add all these up. So just like up here, we just combine the like terms. Look at all the x's. There's 5 of them, and 3 of them makes 8. This counts as a 1x because it's just a plain old x. So we got 8, 9, 10, plus 6 more makes 16 x's. So that took care of this term, this term, this term, this term, and that term. Then you still have a positive 8 and a positive 9 makes positive 17. And that's it. 16 x's plus 17 numbers, units. Okay, then the word problem, you're doing the same thing as what we did up in here. You mowed this many lawns. Your friend mowed this many lawns, 2L minus 7. Write an expression that represents the number of lawns you and your friend mowed. So to figure out how many you and your friend mowed, you have to add these together. So it's just adding, so you don't need to change any signs. You just combine the like terms. There's 6 L's that you did, and there's 2 L's your friend did, so that makes 8 L's. Takes care of the L's. And then there's positive 21 that you did, and minus 7. 21 minus 7 is positive 14. So that's it. Then we get to the equations. Remember, solving the equation just means get the letter by itself. Or variable, I should say. And then it says to check. That just means you can use your calculator to check it. So here's the letter. We got to get rid of the minus 7, so we do the opposite. You add 7. Add 7 to the other side. That makes 21. Drop the equal sign down, and you're left with x there, so it's solved. The letter's by itself. And what they mean by checking is if you just go back, put 21 in place of the x, 21 minus 7 does equal 14. So you can check every one of your answers to make sure you got them right. Here's the letter, so we get rid of the plus by minus 2.1. Subtract 2.1. And again, on the calculator, you would just put in 4.2 and make it negative, and then subtract 2.1. If you did it without a calculator, you got to change the sign, change the sign. They're both negatives, so you add them up, and you keep the sign. And then all you got left on the other side is a y, because that crossed off. So you're done. It's negative 6.3 equals y. Here, it's right up against the x. So when it's against, that means it's times, so you got to do the opposite. You got to divide by not just 0.7, but you got to get rid of the negative 2. So you divide by negative 0.7. That leaves you with just x. Do the same thing here. The negatives would cancel. 2 negatives makes a positive, and that would be 8. And again, if you put that back in to check it, negative 0.7 times 8, press equals, you get that. Now we got 2-step. There's the letter. The 3 is attached to it, so that's going to go last. You get rid of that last. which means you get rid of the plus 2 by subtracting 2. Then do the same to the other side. Negative 10 minus 2 is negative 12. Equals y over 3. Then the second step, it's divided by 3, so you multiply by 3. Do the same thing there, and you get negative 36. On this one, it's kind of a trick. You notice these two terms here each have x's. So they're considered like terms, just like we did up here. When you have like terms, you can combine them when they're on the same side. See, they're not on opposite sides. So on this side, 6x's minus 2x's is just 4x's, equals negative 16. So all we got to do is divide by 4, and you get x equals negative 4. Here, there's the x. So the 2 is attached, so that goes last. So get rid of the plus by subtracting 4.2. So again, on the calculator, you would just put 6.2, make it a negative, and then subtract 4.2. If you use subtract rules, you got to change the sign. They're both negative, so you add them up and keep the sign. Now I got to get rid of this 2. It's times, so you divide by 2. And that would be negative 5.2 equals x. So here, they give you a sentence. You just got to write it out as an equation, so it looks like one of these we just did. And then don't forget, you got to solve it. So, 12 more than a number, more than means it's been added, a number x. So you could write it this way, 12 plus x. It wouldn't be wrong because it doesn't matter what order you add in, but technically more than means you started with the x and you got 12 more than that. Again, either way is fine, it doesn't matter. I'll just do it this way. Is means equals negative 16. So it's a simple one. All we got to do to get rid of the plus 12 is minus 12. Negative 16, take away a 12 is negative 28. So there's your answer. Same thing here. Write the equation and then solve it. The monthly fee for a phone is $20 more than the cost of a cell phone. The regular phone is $65. What is the cost of the cell phone? So, this sentence right here, the monthly fee for a phone, which they tell you right there is $65. So you put the 65 down. It is, that means equals, 20 more than a cell phone. We don't know the cell phone, so we call that x, but we know it's 20 more. Or you could put 20 plus x, it doesn't matter. So all we gotta do to figure this out is just take off the $20 that it's more than. So that means it'd be $45 for a cell phone. Probably figure that out without doing an equation, but it says to write the equation first, so you gotta write it out. And that's it. Remember, it's a short test, so take your time. Once you're done, once you get an answer, take what you got and put it back in to the equation. So all you'd have to do is take 2 times this number plus 4.2, press equals, and make sure you get what's on the other side. So it's easy to check to make sure you have the correct answer or not. Because sometimes it's easy to forget a sign. Sometimes it's easy to just, here you could have added instead of divided. So if you catch your mistake, it's easy to correct.